Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're diving deep, not just into information, but into a collection of true accounts from the wilderness. You know, places we often seek out for peace and escape, but where, well, terror can unexpectedly find you.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is just how diverse these encounters are. But they all share this common, unsettling thread. The realization that you are never truly as safe or, alone as you might think when you're out there. These are raw, really personal experiences of fear.
Right. Our mission today is to walk you through these moments, sort of extracting the details that make them so profoundly unsettling. We've got some truly chilling narratives today, encounters with mysterious figures, the sheer brutal force of nature, human darkness, and even stuff that's, well, truly inexplicable. Let's start with a story that I think perfectly captures the vulnerability of being alone out there. Picture this. A 17-year-old solo camper from Phoenix, Arizona. They're doing an overnight trip into the Superstition Mountains. Started late, ended up having to hike like 4 miles in the dark. Found a spot, maybe not the best spot, signs of an old fire pit there, and then the quiet is just shattered. A small, marble-sized rock lands right in their camp.
And that subtle first act, that tiny disturbance, it's psychologically really potent. It immediately shifts your whole mindset from like peaceful solitude to this state of hyper-awareness, primal unease, really.
Exactly. You go from feeling secure to realizing your space has been breached. So they scan the pines, dense trees all around, but see nothing. They try to brush it off, convince themselves it was nothing. Exhaustion kicks in eventually. But then the real terror starts. They wake up later to this barely audible rustling sound. Reach for their handheld flashlight, lift it right beside them. It's gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Then they see it. Their flashlight lying there 15 feet away, just past the tree line.
15 feet?
Yeah, just out there. Oh. That sent shivers down their spine, obviously. They decide to stay put, though. Figured, whatever's out there would have an even bigger advantage if they tried to hike out in the dark. Makes sense.
Risky either way.
Totally. And then the walking began. Leisurely at first, kind of fading in and out, then returning, getting closer and closer, until it just stops, maybe 7 feet away.
Just outside the light.
Right. Their fire's dwindling down to nothing by this point, and they just have to endure 2 hours of silent terror, waiting for the sun. Finally, enough light comes up, they see they're alone, sprint back to their Subaru, drive like 20 miles away, and that's when they see it. Written in the dust on the back window of their car.
Don't tell me. Sleep well.
That's chilling. That message, sleep well. It just underscores the psychological toll, doesn't it? This isn't just about being isolated physically. It's like you're being watched, toyed with, that panopticon effect, The terror isn't just the potential physical threat, it's that complete loss of control, knowing someone is watching you, messing with you. It leaves a mark. It really does. And building on that theme of psychological games and vulnerability, our next story shows how trust can be twisted, even somewhere you think is safe. This one comes from a 14-year-old. They were camping on private family land, Western Maryland, with their older aunt, deep in the forest near a river. And suddenly, this scruffy man, maybe 40s, dressed all in black even though it's summer, appears across the river. Not far, maybe 15 feet away.
Okay.
He's holding this old yellow camera, not digital, and he's just pointing it at the teens, smiling over and over.
Creepy.
Yeah. Then comes a moment their blood just runs cold. He does that little tut-tut finger wag, points to a knife sheath on his hip.
Oh, no.
And then slices a finger across his throat.
Oh, my God.
The teen and her aunt just ran blindly through rough terrain, hearing splashing, branches snapping behind them. They finally make it back to their grandmother's cabin, sobbing, covered in cuts. Family searches the woods, finds nothing.
And this is where it gets complicated, right? How do you process that fear, especially when maybe the people you trust don't quite believe you?
Exactly. The narrator's mother apparently just dismissed it, said it was probably just a random trespassing fisherman, even though the aunt backed up the story completely.
Right. That invalidation, sometimes it's almost like gaslighting. It adds another layer of trauma, makes you question yourself.
It's a really profound point. The terror isn't just the threat, it's the isolation afterwards. Which brings us to the next account. A 16-year-old's first real camping trip. This one also touches on that violation of personal space. 4 teenage girls settling into their tent, maybe 10:40 at night. Then they hear it. Footsteps circling the tent. Then the sound. Someone tracing the fabric with a stick. So the narrator's sister, maybe on impulse, I don't know, sticks her hand out against the tent wall and feels a leg through the fabric. Clearly an adult stranger.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. Just then, thankfully, their aunt and uncle walk up towards the tent. The circling stops. Whoever it was runs off into the woods. But the family's reaction, almost as unsettling. The girls are obviously terrified, shaking. But the aunt, uncle, even their mother just mocked them, called them paranoid.
Wow. Dismissed again?
Right. And the narrator says to this day they have no idea who it was, what they wanted, never went camping again. Understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. It highlights that deep psychological effect, doesn't it? An unexplained, really unsettling encounter, and then it's compounded by having your fear dismissed. It's not just your physical space violated, it's your feeling of safety, especially when the people who should comfort you don't.
Yeah.
That could be just as damaging.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so from unsettling to truly insidious, this next story shows the dangers that can hide even in places like public campgrounds. Seems safe, right? An 8-year-old narrator and their best friend Faith are camping. They encounter this gross, pervy old man, as the narrator puts it. The next day, he kind of lures them over to his campsite, says he has bikes they can ride.
Ooh, classic luring technique.
Right. And their kids, they go along. But when they get there, no kids, no bikes, just his campsite.
Red flag. Big red flag.
Huge. Then he goes into his trailer and comes out holding duct tape.
Oh, no.
And his grin just twists into, quote, pure anger. The girls, thankfully, recognized the danger, the shift in him. They quickly hid, then ran like hell. But here's the thing. They were too scared to tell their parents.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And that decision led to, in the narrator's words, years of nightmares. It's just a stark reminder of how innocence can be exploited and the trauma that silence can cause.
It really is. A chilling example of how predators operate,
Seemingly benign.
Leveraging innocence, then horror. And the kids not reporting it out of fear, that's tragically common. Underscores why it's so vital kids feel safe to speak up.
Absolutely. Which leads us to our final story in this section. It's from a 21-year-old type 1 diabetic looking back at something from a diabetes camp when they were a kid. There was this male counselor, Jay, had a split tongue, apparently, and he'd look at the child, the narrator says, with hunger in his eyes, made unsettling comments like how good-looking I looked, winking at them, and he kept trying to get the child to go to places with him, where no one was around.
Ugh. Grooming behavior.
Exactly. Then one day, the child's blood sugar drops low, they pass out in the pool, lifeguard rescues them. As the child is walking out, Jay comes up and asks if the lifeguard did mouth-to-mouth with me and that it was hot.
What? That's incredibly inappropriate.
Totally. And the child was so scared they just lied to their mom, said they were homesick and wanted to leave camp. Years later, like in 2019, the truth finally came out. The mom apologized, felt terrible she hadn't known. The narrator just hopes Jay didn't harm any other kids.
It just raises such important questions about trust, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially in environments meant to be safe havens for vulnerable kids. The insidious nature of these threats, often unreported because of shame, fear, disbelief, the power imbalance, it really highlights how crucial it is to listen, really listen, to children's concerns, no matter how subtle they seem.
So true. Okay, so we've touched on the chilling side of human malevolence in the wild. But the wilderness itself holds its own raw, indifferent power. And sometimes, human darkness intersects with that in unexpected ways. This next set of stories shows just how fast peace can turn into peril. First up, the bear trap incident. Imagine this. You're on a challenging 2-hour hike. Suddenly, the ground gives way. You fall into a bear trap, maybe 10 feet deep, maybe more, and you land on a sharpened stick, bones sticking out of your shin.
Oh my God. This is horrific.
Yeah. Their friend initially laughs, thinking it's a clumsy fall, then sees the injury and panics, tries to get them out, can't, so the friend has to go for help, hike back to a ranger station, leaving the narrator alone in the hole, dealing with searing pain.
The isolation on top of the injury, unbearable.
And it gets worse. The sky darkens, thunder starts rolling in. Then, heavy rain, sheets of it. The real terror kicks in when the hole starts filling with water. The narrator realizes they might actually drown in this little hole.
Oh, that's nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
Trapped and drowning.
They're clawing up the muddy wall, just trying to keep their head above water, praying for it to stop. Help eventually arrives, thankfully. The water was just below their belt by then. Surgery, long recovery. But the thought of drowning like that in the middle of nowhere still gives them the willies, they say.
What's striking there is just the sheer bad luck, the confluence of misfortunes, the trap, the terrible injury, being alone, and then the rising water. It really speaks to the raw, indifferent power of the wilderness. Nature can be beautiful, but it can be brutal, and we're incredibly vulnerable within it.
That rawness is often compounded by human darkness, like in our next story, Child Witnessing Murder. That's a heavy one. The narrator had a really tough childhood. Neglect, abuse. Found solace camping out for weeks at a time in the huge woods in New Jersey. But they weren't entirely alone. They realized they shared the woods with groups of homeless people, some of whom were violent. Learned not to stay in one spot too long after almost getting assaulted once.
So the woods were an escape, but also held dangers.
Yeah. Then, one hot afternoon, getting water from a river, the narrator sees something horrifying across the bank. A man gets hit with a beer bottle. Then another man starts attacking him over and over with a big rock, while other people just watch.
Oh, God. Witnessing that as a child.
Unimaginable. The narrator hides for hours, then gets this crazy idea to run for help, runs 3 miles back to their apartment, but their parents both had drinking problems. They just yelled at the child, accused them of lying, making up stories, even hit them. The child just felt stupid for even trying to help.
That's just devastating. It's not just the horror witness, but the complete failure of the supposed safety net. Experiencing those adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, neglect, abuse, shatters your world. Seeking solace elsewhere, like the woods, makes sense. But then to have the trauma invalidated, punished even, that deepens the wound profoundly.
It's truly heartbreaking. Thankfully, there was a turning point. The narrator was sent to live with their grandpa Mac. He was loving, patient, taught them about nature. Years later, the narrator finally felt safe enough to tell him the story. Grandpa Mac listened, believed them, advised contacting the police, which they eventually did. The case was solved years later, and the narrator found purpose, became a wildlife conservationist. It's an incredible story of resilience, how compassion can guide someone towards healing, even after unimaginable trauma.
A testament to finding a path forward. Amazing.
Yeah. Okay, our final story in this section, the poacher shooting, is a reminder that even innocent childhood fun can turn into a nightmare in an instant. Early 80s. The narrator and their brother Mike are camping with family over Thanksgiving in a national forest. This always coincided with hunting season. Gunshots were pretty common background noise, but these two boys, young, playing war games in the woods, unsupervised.
Sounds like trouble waiting to happen during hunting season.
Yeah. And one Thanksgiving, it did. A loud bang, really close, immediately followed by a whistling sound right past the narrator's head. They drop to the ground instantly. Wait maybe 30 seconds. Then hear faint moaning. Mike's missing.
Oh no.
The narrator finds Mike under a bush. There's blood pouring out from a hole under his arm. Kid tries to stay cool, tries to carry Mike, but can't. Runs for help. Mom yells for dad. Dad sprints out, carries Mike back. Frantic race to the hospital. Mike nearly died. Apparently died more than once during surgery.
Unbelievable. Just from playing.
Police figure a poacher must have mistaken Mike's movement in the bushes for a deer, shot recklessly.
Just horrifying negligence and the impact.
Huge. The family never went back to that national forest. Started choosing national parks instead, felt safer. Mike fully recovered, thankfully lives a normal life. But that event changed everything for them.
Yeah, it completely alters your perception, doesn't it? That place of fun becomes linked to this life-threatening trauma. It shapes how you interact with the wilderness forever, seeking different kinds of safe nature experiences.
Exactly. Okay, let's venture into the truly inexplicable now. This next series of accounts all come from one place, a summer camp in the northeastern U.S. Isolated, beautiful setting, forest, pond, ravine, minimal contact with the outside world. And it apparently has this long, complex history with, well, the paranormal. Staff consistently, year after year, experience unnerving things. Oddly, campers rarely seem to.
That consistency is key, isn't it? It raises the question, why this place? What is it about the location, the history, the energy, maybe the isolation itself? When you have so many people over time sharing similar weird experiences, it points towards something more than just coincidence. Suggests a genuine, pervasive phenomenon.
For sure. And the phenomena were pretty consistent. Counselors would see quick blinking lights, erratic patterns in the sky, strange red flickering objects, things that even friends who knew astronomy would look at and just say, that's simply impossible. Beyond weird lights, nightmares were common. Figures standing in the corner of cabins or at the foot of bunks.
Classic sleep paralysis imagery perhaps, but consistently reported. Makes you wonder.
Right, and other stuff too. Screams, voices carried on the wind when no one was there, footsteps pacing around empty buildings, items disappearing then reappearing somewhere totally illogical. Heavy padlocked doors found wide open, counselors getting locked in buildings somehow. Lots of skeptics apparently became believers working there.
You can see why. That accumulation of ants.
The camp even had its own famous ghosts. A boy seen running through the REC field and a woman in white. But an older counselor, nicknamed Slag, apparently debunked those two specific ones.
Ah, okay. Logical explanation.
Yeah, Slag figured out the boy's shadow was actually passed by an electrical box at certain times, and the woman in white. An oversized American flag on a distant pole, dancing in the wind, looked like a figure from afar.
Right. It's interesting how we seek rational explanations, and sometimes find them. That's important too. But what's fascinating is what Slag apparently said after debunking those. His insight was, even with those explained away, the other real experiences made it totally clear we were not alone here. So debunking some things actually strengthened the belief in the genuinely unexplained stuff.
Yeah.
That core sense of something else remained.
Exactly. Now, one of the most consistently unnerving places at this camp was the day camp building. It was an old 2-story house, separate from the main camp, felt really eerie and isolated. The narrator mentions Blair Witch Project vibes, feeling physically pressed down on inside or sensing an eerie crowd of silent, watchful people just staring.
Just a heavy, oppressive atmosphere.
Yeah, and lights would turn on by themselves downstairs at night. Sometimes the counselor who locked up earlier would be the one to find them back on.
Faulty wiring
Yeah. So the narrator's big personal experience with day camp happened during a missing camper drill, standard safety procedure. They got assigned to search the day camp building alone. I felt this huge sense of dread going over there. Searches the building top to bottom. It feels unnaturally silent, all clear. Locks the main door behind them. But as they're walking away, they pass these external cellar doors. They'd always been told not to bother checking them, maybe assumed they didn't open or led nowhere important. They freeze. Both heavy cellar doors are flung wide open.
Whoa, during the drill?
Yeah, and there's a yellowish light shining out from inside the cellar. This cellar was always padlocked. No one supposedly had a key. And there was no known light source down there. Ever.
Okay, that's genuinely weird.
Yeah.
And unexplained.
Gets weirder. At the exact same moment this is happening, another friend, Amino, is checking a different area as part of the drill. She passes a maintenance shed, also padlocked, not part of her search zone. Suddenly, the shed door starts shaking violently.
Shaking from the inside.
Yeah. She thinks maybe the missing camper is trapped inside, panics, runs to get the key, swings the door open, empty, nothing inside. And the maintenance guy wasn't even on camp property that day.
Wow. So 2 simultaneous, inexplicable events during the same drill.
Exactly. The missing camper was found safe elsewhere, nowhere near either spot. When the staff compared notes later, they were shaken, but kind of not surprised. It just reinforced that collective feeling. We simply weren't alone. The narrator later reflected, thinking maybe the spirits or whatever they were didn't want to physically harm anyone. Maybe they just wanted to be noticed.
Acknowledged.
Yeah. Seen, talked about, remembered, part of the camp's identity, its ongoing story.
That makes sense, in a way, if we connect this to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
It moves beyond just ghost stories, doesn't it? It's a pattern. A systemic pattern of unexplained events tied to a specific place. Suggests maybe these entities, whatever they are somehow integrated into the fabric, the identity of the location itself. Blurring lines.
Yeah, blurring lines is a good way to put it. So what does this all mean for us? What do we take away? I mean, from remote mountains to family land, you think, even organized camps. These stories are potent reminders, aren't they? Our sense of safety in the wild, maybe anywhere, can be surprisingly fragile.
Definitely.
Whether it's hidden human intent or the raw power of nature or something truly unexplainable, the wilderness holds secrets, challenges, things that can leave a lasting mark.
And it really raises that important question, doesn't it? How do these unsettling encounters change us? How do they shape our view of places we thought were safe? And maybe more deeply, how do people cope with experiences that just defy rational explanation? That lingering impact, the unanswered questions, the shifts in perspective. That's what makes these stories resonate so much, I think. Makes you look at the world a bit differently.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this, unsettling journey through these incredible true stories. We hope they've given you plenty to think about. Until next time, stay curious and maybe keep an extra eye on your surroundings. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Horror Docs.